Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Kubra Zengin, and I'm the North America Regional Lead for Google Developer Groups and Women Tech Makers programs at Google. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the Elevate with Google Developers. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. We would love to know where you are joining from. While you do that, I would like to kick it off with an introduction to the Elevate with Google Developers. Elevate is a full year applied skills program that we are hosting great speakers on a monthly basis on the themes of how to transition to a new career, how to grow your career, and how to grow yourself as a professional. Within those themes, we touch on communication skills, leadership skills, and negotiation, and so on. So you can check out the website for more information for the schedule and topics specifically. With every session, you will incorporate your learnings to your professional career and take it to the next level with some workshops and presentations that we have throughout the year. We are thrilled that you could join us for all of the sessions, and we hope all you benefit from the content. Housekeeping for today. So, as this is a great guideline for all of our events, I would like to remind you, all of you, let's be excellent to each other. To that extent, please follow all the community guidelines on our website and then the links we share in our communications. Secondly, add your questions to the chat, and we are going to answer all of the questions in a timely manner once we have all of the questions from you, and then we are going to highlight some of them in the live Q&A session. So just be mindful of your time, that you can just shoot the questions right away if you want to just get it answered, or you can wait for, of course, later. And lastly, we are here to help with your questions. If you have any concerns or like any feedback or comments, you can share with us at elevate-team@google.com. All right, let's get it started. So today's session will start with a presentation followed by a Q&A session, as I said. You can ask your questions during the presentation on the comment section, and we are going to address all the questions and get answers from the speakers in the live version. Now, I'm going to welcome Tobias to just talk about effective meetings and like answer the questions you have for how to facilitate the effective questions. Okay, let's welcome Tobias.
Thank you so much, Kubra, for that wonderful introduction. And hi, everyone. I'm so happy and grateful to be here to talk to you about leading impactful meetings. My name is Toby, and I'll tell you a bit more about myself in a moment. But before we start, I want you to have my best advice at the top of the session. And that advice is this. Every Friday, I want you to take 27 minutes out of your day and do one thing. And that one thing is this. I want you to look through your calendar for the next 10 working days and look at every meeting that you are leading. And for each of those meetings, answer this question. Do I have an objective and do I have an agenda? And if the answer to either of those questions is no, use those 27 minutes to think about what your objective for that meeting is, what the agenda for that meeting should be, and share that with the participants. Not only will you be doing them a great favor because suddenly your meeting becomes a lot more effective, but you're also doing yourself a great favor because you're showing everyone in the meeting that you are very clear about what you want to achieve in the time you're asking them to invest in spending with you. Now, like I said before, my name is Toby. I'm a proud father, happy husband. I'm also a program manager here at Google. I'm a trainer and a storyteller. But most of all, for today, it's important for you to know that I lead many meetings and I participate in many more meetings. And if you are anything like me, if your work week looks anything like mine, some of those meetings are really good, some of those meetings are absolutely terrible. And what we're going to talk about today is how we can take the meetings that we lead and how we can make them just so much better, not only for ourselves, but also for everyone participating in them. Now, I'll preface this by saying that these are my personal views and tips on leading impactful meetings, and I talk about these freely inside of Google, I talk about them outside of Google, and I'm here to share my insights with you so that you can benefit from them wherever you are in whichever organization you're working in or with. Question: how many hours do you spend in meetings every week? Think about it. Is it 1 hour every week? Is it 4 hours every week? Are you close to 8 hours every week or one full working day? Or maybe, like me, it's something like 20 hours a week, right? And we all have a different answer to this question, but the answer is always, well, I spend time in meetings. And there's a reason for that, because meetings are an integral part of our work week. Now let me rephrase this question for you. How many hours do you spend in productive meetings? Is it all the meetings you go to? Do you find them all equally productive? Or are some meetings maybe a bit more productive than others? Well, if you're like me, probably some meetings you attend, you feel like they were a waste of time. And other meetings you go to, you're like, well, these are really important and useful meetings, and I'm getting so much out of them. But what is the difference? What makes the biggest difference? Well, we're going to talk about that in a moment. And once you understand what makes the difference between a bad meeting and a good meeting, an unproductive meeting and a really productive meeting, you can start applying these things to your own working week, which means that you will get a lot more work done in the hours you have available, or in other words, you'll have a bit of week left at the end of your work. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because meetings are one of the most effective ways to get different disciplines, different ideas, a lot of creativity, different levels of knowledge into a room to discuss, debate, and shape ideas and projects to the benefit of everyone, right? So meetings are a tool for us to use in our work week, and meetings are a tool that we need to keep very sharp, and we need to hone through time and practice our skill of using this tool to maximum advantage. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you can do that. Now, whether you're meeting in person or virtual, as most of us are at the moment, or whether you're in a hybrid situation where some people are in an office or in a location and others are dialing in from wherever it is that they're working at the moment, these tips and tricks are going to help you tremendously increase the impact your meetings have. And I want you to make 3 very simple changes. And when I tell you what these changes are, you're going to be like, well, I already knew that, and I know you know this, but it's not about whether you know what these tips are. It's about whether you're taking those 27 minutes every Friday afternoon to apply them to the meetings that you have scheduled for you and your team and your colleagues and your business partners. So the first tip for you is to plan for conversations, not for lectures. This is an easy trap to fall into, right? Because we prepare for a meeting, we have something to say, we finally have everyone in the room, and we want to share all of the good insights and knowledge and ideas that we have collected over time for their benefit. But in today's day and age, actually, we can do that via YouTube, we can do that via podcast, we can do that in an email, we can do that in a shared document. So whenever the purpose of the meeting is to just share information, there are literally limitless ways right now that you can do that, and that you can do that better. Rather, the purpose of the meeting, of getting people together, is to have that conversation that you cannot otherwise have. And you want to optimize the workspace towards that. So when you're planning your meeting, plan for a conversation. And you'll see, if you start to survey the people who are participating in your meetings, if you plan lectures, they're going to rate your meeting as being kind of, well, I didn't really get to contribute anything. But if you start to plan for conversations, you'll see the ratings of your meeting go up because people like to participate and contribute. All right? That's why we're here. That's why we like to get together, because we have ideas and we want to share them. And one of the best ways to do that still is through meetings. Second tip, Be thoughtful of who you invite. Now, why does this matter? Meetings are little balls of energy. And when you get a lot of people into the meeting that can contribute to keeping that ball of energy rolling and going, right? The meeting gains momentum, and that momentum is infectious. People snap onto it. Creativity flows. People have great ideas, and everyone learns and grows through the interaction. But the flip side of that is if you have a lot of audience members there, or people who are invited to the meeting and show up not sure what to expect, or not even sure if they can contribute anything, well, that detracts from the energy. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a value judgment of the people who are participating or who are showing up. It's just the way these dynamics flow. Because if you're not knowledgeable about a topic and a decision needs to be made, maybe the other people in the meeting need to spend a lot of time getting you up to speed, and you might find that you don't even have the need or the want to participate or contribute to the decision that needs to be made. So, better for you as the lead of a meeting is to be thoughtful of who you invite to the meeting so that they are clear on why you want them to be there. Because they, the people you invite, have the right to ask you, well, what do you expect from me when I show up to your meeting? Because you're asking me for time. So what do you want to get out of it? And more importantly, also, what am I going to get out of it? So what's in it for me? And when you start to approach your meeting invite list through that lens, you'll see that your meeting size might start to shrink, but the impact of your meetings begins to grow. Because having the people in the meeting who can contribute to the conversation or the discussion is absolutely tantamount to the meeting's success. Third tip, share the agenda 7 days before. This is by far the biggest detractor of good meetings, and that is not having a clear agenda up front, or worse, having an agenda that is gobbled together by everyone writing in an email what they want to discuss and then just randomly sticking that in order, starting with the first email and ending with the last email to come in, and then throwing the agenda out the window when someone at the table says, well, actually, what I think we need to discuss today is this, all right? Having a clear agenda does a couple of things for your meetings, and it is going to make you a more effective meeting host and meeting leader. First of all, it provides clarity about the objective, because if the objective is to reach a decision on Project X, then anything that is not related to Project X should not be on the agenda. So it provides clarity. Second of all, when you then look at who you need to invite to the meeting, you can look at the agenda and say, well, it looks like all the people that can contribute to Project X can be there at that date and that time. So that is when we're going to have the meeting. This is the agenda, and this is the objective that we're trying to reach then. Making it immediately clear to the people you're inviting why they're invited, what's expected from them, and what they can come and contribute or help drive forward by participating in this meeting. In other words, everybody wins. Now, 7 days before is a bit arbitrary, but definitely not 24 hours before. Try to put some space in between. Why? So people have the time to respond to you and say, hey, I see that this is the meeting objective and I'm just looking at the agenda, but what I also think would be very relevant to at least have on the agenda or have shared up front is some information about this topic or that topic, because I think it will contribute to a better decision or a better conversation. Boom, you win, because now you've made the meeting better and you've had the people you've invited to the meeting participate in creating the meeting content, meaning they are probably going to be a bit more engaged and a bit more vested in the meeting's outcome. All of this comes down to preparation, right? And that is always on you as the meeting host. So if you, as the meeting host, want to run more impactful meetings, want to lead people to a specific outcome, then preparation is going to be key. So think about who you're going to invite to the meeting, think about what needs to be on the agenda, and think about how you're going to structure the meeting to foster conversation and participation from everyone involved. Now, the next question you want to really ask yourself is, well, why are we having this meeting? In other words, what is the meeting's objective? And there could be a number of different objectives that you might be after. So let's run through a couple of them, all right? One objective could be to get some work done. And when you design a meeting to get some work done, well, that meeting is going to follow some specific steps and a specific agenda. Whether you have 1 hour, 3 hours, or 8 hours for this working session, likely your project is at point A and you want it to be at a different milestone, C, D, E, or F, by the end of that meeting. And all of the work you're doing, all of the conversations you're having are geared towards driving the work forward. So that's what you design into the agenda. Another objective could be a training. And when I design a training, I'm very deliberate about what it is that I want people to know or to be able to do at the end of that. And everything that doesn't contribute to them learning that specific bit of knowledge or practicing that specific new skill or tool is cut out of the agenda. So the agenda follows the objective very clearly. A third objective could be a brainstorm. And if you're like me, you've been to quite a few brainstorms in your time, and maybe you've been to that one brainstorm where someone showed up with a PowerPoint, and instead of brainstorming, you spend the next 45 minutes listening to them running through all of their good ideas and trying to get you to agree to the one they thought was the best one. That is not a brainstorm, all right? If the objective is for people to engage and to co-create with you, you want to create an environment where people can contribute and participate in a conversation. And we'll talk a bit more about a few tools you have to actually do that at the end of this presentation. Another objective could be a pitch, project pitch, or a sales pitch. And the agenda for such a pitch meeting is obviously going to be structured around what it is that you want to converse about and what it is that you want to change someone's mind about. So if you are preparing for a pitch, be careful not to turn the pitch into a brainstorm or to turn the pitch into a debate. All right, so there is a specific design that you want to keep in mind when you're designing a pitch versus, for example, a work meeting. And another objective could be to share information. The lecture, something akin to what you're listening to right now, and that is sometimes a limitation of the medium, but oftentimes the sharing sessions can be skipped. Like I said before, if the objective is to purely to share information, in virtual specifically, but actually in the environment we work in today with all of the virtual media we have available, you can literally just create a video or an audio file or a presentation or a working doc and share that with everyone so that they are up to speed, so that when you get together, you can actually use the time for this valuable interaction called conversation and debate and discussion, so that you can further ideas, deepen concepts, and co-create great projects and initiatives together. But sometimes sharing is a very valid objective. If something urgently has changed and you need to get everyone into a room quickly and you need to give a status update, that is perfectly fine, but then make sure you keep it crisp, you keep it clear, and you keep it simple, all right? Nobody wants a 2-hour lecture on video. Whatever your objective is, you as the meeting leader need to learn to adapt your style. You need to learn to flex different skills in different situations, whether you're preparing or leading a specific type of meeting. And the only way to do that is by practicing, all right? Getting out in front of groups, working through meetings that Friday afternoon for those 27 minutes. It really doesn't take a lot more time than that. And using these muscles and developing the skills to actually lead different kinds of meetings very effectively. Now, the key differentiator in good meetings versus bad meetings is that really good meetings have a proactive facilitator, a proactive lead, and that is you. So if you want to lead impactful meetings, you want to take ownership of the results. You want to say, well, what is within my sphere of influence? What can I do to make this the best meeting possible? And I've just run you through a couple of pretty good ideas that are going to help you do just that. But it is not the participants' responsibility to create the environment in which they can flourish. It is yours because you've asked them to spend some time with you. Now, there are a couple of great tools that have been around for quite a long time, but that we've all been using in the last 2 years. specifically forced on us in the situation where we're all working from home a lot more, or working remote a lot more, that you can use to run really good meetings with people from all over the world. One tool is to use breakouts. Now, oftentimes I get questions when I give trainings about running impactful meetings is how to keep people more engaged. And one of the tools that I find is often overlooked is the fact that people are engaged when they get to contribute and when they get to converse with other people in the meeting. So by using breakouts smartly, when you, for example, notice that the energy in a long meeting is starting to lag, you can send people out into smaller groups and say, why doesn't everyone go grab a cup of coffee and then in small groups discuss this topic in particular, because I think it deserves a bit more depth of conversation. And then we're going to come back together and do a quick recap. And you'll notice if you use breakouts smartly and sparsely, that when people return from breakouts and small group interactions, their energy levels are suddenly higher. Why? Because people like to converse and people like to share ideas and people like to just have these little moments where they can talk to each other almost one-on-one. And we used to have this a lot more when we were at the office, because we could walk to and from a coffee machine or to and from a restaurant at the end of a long working day for these little micro conversation. And that is sometimes where the magic happens. So using breakouts is a really valuable tool for creating better meetings. The second one is to work in shared documents. Have you ever been the note taker in a meeting where everyone's talking and you want to contribute, but because you're always typing up the notes, well, you don't really get a chance to participate? It's kind of a drain, right? I believe that when I work with my team or when I work on a project group, that everyone owns the meeting notes. So I will always create a shared working doc, a shared log that everyone can contribute and work in. And what I learned over the past year and a half is that sometimes people are not participating in the conversation, but by the end of the meeting, they've marked up and left a lot of really good comments in the margins, which if we hadn't had the shared working doc, they probably wouldn't have been able to do. So this also shows me that there are different ways for people to participate in the meetings that I'm running, and that is completely fine with me. All right, but a shared working doc is an absolute gem of a tool that you can use to your advantage. Take the pressure off the one person who's the assigned note taker, and nobody really likes being the assigned note taker. No, really, we don't. And instead make it a collaborative effort, because that way notes can get updated and refreshed and refined as the conversation rolled forward. And it is a very, very precious gift that we can work in this way in this day and age. The third tool that you have at your disposal, and this one is specifically useful in a virtual setting. Why? Because in a virtual setting, we need a little bit more structure than we need outside of the virtual setting, but it is to go around the room. Why? By giving everyone an opportunity to speak, by giving everyone an opportunity to contribute, or to say, no, I don't have anything to add at this moment, which is always a completely fine way to pass your turn to the next person in line. You create the space for everyone to speak up and to add to the conversation. You can do this at the start of the meeting, you can do this at the middle of the meeting, you can do this at the end of the meeting, you can do this whenever you want, you can do this multiple times. It is a very useful tool to just gauge where everyone is on the topic. And sometimes when I go around the room, somebody says, well, we've been lingering on this topic for quite a while. I feel we need to move on. And you'll see other people around the room nod. So it's also a great tool for you as a meeting facilitator to understand where people are in their process and in their energy. Always assume good intent. Whatever you are doing when you're running meetings, people might have their camera off in a virtual environment. Well, you don't know, maybe their whole family is sitting at the dinner table behind them because they couldn't go to school that day. Doesn't mean that they're disengaged from the meeting. Even what has always struck me in the meetings that I've run over the past year is that every time I've thought, well, their camera is off, they're disengaged, I've generally gotten a ping or a message from the person afterwards saying, I'm really sorry, my camera is off during the meeting, but I was really engaged in this and this point, really stuck with me. I look forward to discussing it in the next meeting or when we have a chance. And that has always told me that I actually don't know what's going on the other side. This could also be when you're sitting around a table and someone's on their phone. Generally, it's a bit annoying, right? Because you're like, oh, they're not paying attention to what's going on at the table. But it could be that they're looking up some random fact or information related to the conversation going on to be better able to present their argument and contribute to furthering the project, right? So assume good intent. Whatever you see or experience in the room, don't get defensive, but be proactive, be open. And when in doubt, just ask, all right? And just ask and bring the attention of everyone in the room back to the central discussion. So we talked about 3 things that you could do different in preparation of your meeting, and we talked about 3 tools that you have at your disposal to run better meetings. Now, whether you are running in-person meetings, virtual meetings, or hybrid meetings, these tips apply to all of them. But different settings require different mindset and a different preparation when it comes to executing them well and properly. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits and the drawbacks of the 3 different meeting environments that you might encounter as I see them. Now, the first is in-person, and one major benefit of in-person meetings is the interpersonal bonding. So it means the walks to the coffee machine, like I said, the walk to dinner after a long day at the office, just the little chit-chats as you're in the elevator going up and down. This kind of bonding is really only possible when you have this in-person environment, and it is incredibly valuable, and you should always try to meet in person if possible, at least once every 3 to 6 months, because that is really the glue that makes collaboration great. A drawback of in-person meetings, however, is geography. So let's say you have a team meeting and you want a specialist to come in, right? But the specialist only can contribute to one very small part of your day-long seminar. Well, for the specialist to travel, right, this is a huge drain on their time and resources, because they have to take maybe 1 to 2 days out of their schedule to come contribute for 1 hour and then move on. Whereas if everyone is in the same location, you do get this benefit of interpersonal bonding, and you kind of get to work together closer and maybe in between the time when work is scheduled. But this geographical disbursement is really a big drawback for in-person meetings. So keep in mind that in-person meetings are really great for building and fostering connections, but they do limit the scope of who you can invite to the meeting at any given time. Hybrid is much more accommodating of this, right? Because now you can have that same specialist dial in from a remote location, give the team the information they need, and then they can move on in the in-person environment, meaning that you've used the best of both worlds. So what hybrid workspaces do is they actually allow you to flex talent and knowledge and skill from all over the world into one central location where the core team is working. And this is really a great gift that you should use more often to your advantage. But hybrid locations or hybrid work also comes with the risk of disparity. If you've ever been on the VC while your whole team was in the meeting room together, you know the feeling, right? Where you kind of feel you're missing out because you're watching a conversation unfold on a screen. And no matter how hard people try to actually involve you in the conversation, it always feels a little bit different. And this is fine because this is just the way this is set up. But you want to be mindful of that if you're leading or planning meetings that are hybrid, and you want to do whatever you can to mitigate that, to make sure that it feels equitable, that it feels like the people dialing in from remote locations are participating as much as the people who are in the physical location. Finally, virtual meetings. And I have to say up front, I love virtual meetings. Why? Because I have had the opportunity in the past year to work with talent from all over the world that I otherwise would not have had the opportunity to work with because I was bound to my geographical region. So when you're working in the virtual space, suddenly there are very few limits, right? There are time zones and time differences, but those can generally be overcome with some smart planning. So this global reach of virtual meetings is an absolute gem of an advantage that you need to lean into always and everywhere you can. But virtual meetings come with a slight drawback, and that is that they lack that spontaneity of the in-person meeting, right? When you meet in a virtual space, when the camera goes off, everyone goes their own way. There's no chat towards the coffee machine, there's no elevator ride, there's no dinner at the end of the day with colleagues. So this bonding, this glue that makes collaborations really great is missing. And you can mitigate that by doing some fun activities in the virtual space, but it's not the same. So take the opportunity to work with global talent when you're working in the virtual space, but just be mindful that if you want a really tight-knit team, maybe having an in-person meeting once in a while is going to help you build in that spontaneity into the team dynamic if you think you need it. I've run projects in the last year and a half, completely virtual, where we've had a blast and where we've become really good friends without ever meeting in person. So you can do it, but in my opinion, the spontaneous and magical moments of in-person meetings, great ideas over dinner or over a stroll through the park at the end of the day or midday when we're taking a break or doing a breakout, just not possible in the virtual space. Now, before you go, I have 3 more tips for you, just because I think you will benefit from them. The first one is that I would really urge you, for as long as you're planning on working remote, is to check your Wi-Fi connection. People often ask me, well, why do you ask this still 1.5 years into working remote? It's because I still find people who haven't done a Wi-Fi speed test at this point in time. Wi-Fi, when you're working remote or when you're working hybrid, is your lifeline to the world. So having a good internet connection is the best resource you have to make sure your virtual presence is what it needs to be, and that your reach to colleagues and your ability to drive projects and to lead meetings is as good as it can be. The second tip I have for you in the virtual workspace is that investing in a good microphone is probably a really good idea, because sound is your best friend in the virtual space. We could turn off the camera. You don't even need to look at me talking, because I'm just standing here gesturing with my arms at a camera. But you could listen to my voice, and if the quality of the sound carries well, it is probably going to be a really good experience for you. And you know this is true because when you listen to older recordings, or when someone has their phone in their pocket and the microphone is still on their phone when they're using earbuds and you have this crackling sound, it is a big distraction. Clear sound in the virtual space is absolutely tantamount to having strong virtual presence. Now, you don't have to get a streamer mic like this. You could get a boom mic on a headset that does the job just fine, but make sure you're able to project your voice into the virtual space, because when you're leading meetings, it is very important that people can hear what you have to say. Third tip for you, working specifically in this virtual and this hybrid space, is where you put the camera. And if you put the camera at eye level, you can really give people the feeling that you're right there in the room with them having a cup of coffee. And just by looking at them through the camera, that can already create a little bit of magic. But that is a better position to be speaking with someone in than, for example, this one. And we've all been in that meeting. I know you have. I've been there too. And it is such a surreal experience, because the person you're looking at thinks they're talking with you, but you are very much aware that that is not the case. So whatever you do, try to make sure the camera is at eye height and that you can look straight into it, because that is at least a way to make a little bit more of a personal connection in this virtual workspace when you're leading your meetings. Now, if there's one thing that you're going to do after this session, it is that you are going to take 27 minutes this Friday, and you're going to look through your calendar and you're going to ask yourself, what is the objective for the meetings that I'm leading, and what is the agenda for the meetings that I'm leading? And if you find any meeting in your calendar that does not have an objective and does not have a calendar, you're going to use those 27 minutes. You're going to use those 27 minutes to set up the time and set up the objective and set up the agenda, so that everyone you've invited to that meeting can bring their best self and drive your projects forward. I look forward to answering your questions in a bit, so feel free to shoot me anything else you want to discuss.
All right. Now we are
Hello.
back live. Welcome, welcome, Tobias.
Thank you,
Once again,
Kibra. Good to
that
be
was
here.
yeah, that was actually nice presentation, and then I like the tips a lot, and then we have lots of questions coming in right now. So actually the last one is really really nice. Like, sorry for the question, but why 27 minutes, not 30? I love that one. But yeah, we
I'll
will.
answer that at the end
Yeah,
for sure.
yes,
For sure.
perfect. So let's start with the first question. So Huda is asking, I'm curious if you have some diplomatic tips to moderate and stop people from diverging away from the agenda items. Back to you.
It's a very good question, and it comes up a lot in any training that I give, right? Because meetings, when you lead a meeting, you are trying to keep it on track, and you're trying to reach a certain goal with the group that's there. And if you look at this question, there's already upfront there are a couple of things that you need to consider in the first three tips, right? What's the objective? What's the agenda? And who's been invited? Because you could already mitigate a lot of derailing by working on those three things. It's clear what you're there to discuss, it's clear what you want to accomplish, and it's clear who's there to contribute to that. And generally, if you have people there who want to contribute to that outcome, if it's a work group meeting, right, the meeting will go relatively smoothly and go forward. Not always, but most of the time. Sometimes someone needs to be brought up to speed, or someone doesn't understand what's going on, or there is an honest difference of opinion, and that should be fine. Because if we all agreed on everything in relationship to the work that we want to do and the objective that we have, we wouldn't have to have meetings. We could just ping or send emails to each other, and we could move forward, right? So when you look at people diverging from the agenda, you have to wonder, well, what's going on here? What are we trying to accomplish, and how are they contributing to that? I never assume bad intent. In fact, I don't mind some debate and conversation in meetings, because that's what I think meetings are for. What I do think, and I think this is part of the answer for Huda's question, is um, as the facilitator, I am responsible for the flow of the meeting, and I am responsible for the good experience in the meeting. So I don't like it when people become personal in meetings. I think debates and conversations should be centered around the topic and around the business, right? Around the project, not around the person. So that's one way. And you, as a facilitator, can always step in and say, let's keep this on topic. Be firm, but be kind, and keep it centered on the objective that needs to be done. So say something like, well, let me just re-centralize here and summarize. We're here to decide on XYZ, and we have two opinions on that. If I explain this opinion correctly, summarize the conflicting opinions, and then say, do we need to hear more about both opinions, or can we make a decision? And you keep it very factual without turning to the person who's asking questions, for example. As a general rule, right, when you talk about diplomatic tips, it's an interesting word. It is as the lead, you want to run an inclusive meeting, you want to run a fair meeting, want to run an equitable meeting. You want to be considerate of people's feelings and opinions, because that's why you've invited them. So always make it about the objective, always make it about the work, and never about the person. And if someone is really bent on driving the meeting in their direction, also trust the work group. As a final tip here, there are probably more than three people in the meeting, and if someone is really stuck or bent on their opinion for whatever reason, they might have good reasons, and acknowledge that and accept that. Do also look to the other people in the meeting room and say, well, are we missing something here, or do we need more data to drive this decision and bring it forward, to de-escalate any kind of conflict or derailing that's going on. And if you really want to move on, you can always just say, well, it looks like we need more time for this topic. I can schedule a separate session to discuss this. And you can defer the discussion because it doesn't seem to be leading anywhere, and there are other topics on your agenda. And that also gives you the time to work one-on-one with the different people in the meeting to get the alignment you want to drive it forward. If that's a suitable answer, an acceptable answer. I hope we can see
Actually,
in the chat.
that was a detailed answer. So like I really loved it. So first of all, let's hear from Huda if that answers the question, and then yeah, we can just move on to the next one. Thank you. So Perry is asking tips for handling challenging slash difficult attendees. Yes,
Right.
that's a challenge actually.
That is a challenge, and it also comes back to the previous point, right? They're quite related to each other in a way. I see Huda says thanks. You're very
Yes.
welcome.
Okay.
But there are different types of difficult attendees. Um, let's take a bit of a bird's eye view here first of all, and let's talk about meeting culture, because different work groups, different places, different groups of people have different meeting cultures. And as you step into lead in any given meeting culture, you want to be aware of that. So you want to make yourself aware of the norms and of what is acceptable and not acceptable in meetings. And what I mean for this is what not what I mean. To give you an example, I am naturally inclined to avoid conflict. I don't generally like people who sit in meetings with me won't say that they think this is very true, but naturally I am inclined to avoid conflict. But there are environments where I work in where heavy debates are the norm, and where people step up to defend what they believe in. But at the end of that, they are also fine with the decision that the group makes, and we can all move on, right? And that balances it out. So as long as the debate and the conflict again is centered around the work that needs to be done, it is also a part of managing your own reflection of that environment, and also getting comfortable with what is okay to do in a given meeting culture. That's one. The other thing is there could be this one person or these two persons who disrupt the meeting for whatever reason, and upfront I'll say sometimes the meeting is just going to get disrupted, and there's nothing you can do about it. No matter how well you prepare, no matter how well you try to lead it, there could be different reasons for that person to be able to disrupt the meeting you want to have, and that's fine. Be okay with that. Don't fight it. I'm a big fan of the idea of aikido in communication. I practice judo myself, but this idea of taking the energy and guiding it somewhere else rather than creating a barrier and creating friction and conflict with it. So just accept that is the way it is, and try to guide it as well you can, and then leave it at that. You can have a conversation with the person afterwards, but you will also see when trying to handle difficult attendees, someone who's disrupting the meeting, if there's 8 people in the meeting and one person is disruptive, there are 7 people there who want to get on with it. And it is always fair to, like I said, call for a breakout. Take a little time out and kind of take a person aside and talk about what's going on. Maybe there's something that they really want to share and they don't feel heard, or maybe the way they're voicing their opinion is not the way the group works, right? And you want to create a space for them to do that, because again, going back to my first 3 tips, you invited them because you valued their opinion, so you can't uninvite them because the opinion they're sharing does not agree with your view of the world, right? That those two go hand in hand. So you can call a timeout. You can also point to the topic and the time in the agenda and say, well, we're at 45 minutes of an hour-long meeting. We are still on the third point, and we have one more point to cover. I would like to take the 15 minutes to do that. Are we all okay to move on and to defer the conversation on this topic? Or, how are we going to manage this? And you can go around the room, and there are 6 or 7 people there that will give you an opinion to balance the person who is disruptive to the meeting as you see it. And I think that last point is important, right? Because it could be you find it disruptive because you have an objective. You want to get to the end of the agenda. But I've been in meetings where I have felt that way, and then I've asked the group, and everyone's like, no, actually, and we all have half an hour. Can we stay a bit longer? But can we finish this topic because we think it's really important? And I was like, oh, I totally missed it, right? I didn't see that. And you want to be honest enough and mature enough and professional enough to admit that, and to then be okay with that and be flexible. If that's an answer to Perry's question, Perry can let us know
Perfect.
in the chat.
Yeah, actually, he already thanked, so we should be
Super,
good. Thank you.
super.
So is asking. So after about 20 minutes in a virtual meeting, my ability to pay attention reduces. What can I do to help me pay attention? So this is actually
Yeah.
like a human psychological thing, I guess. So just this is normal as far as I know. But yeah, tell me.
It
Tell us.
absolutely is. I love this question because it has come up from day one that I've started training people in running
Uh-huh.
virtual meetings specifically, since March last year, and it has never gone. It has never gone away. So there's a couple of things here. First of all, attention span is attention span. Actually, 10 minutes is really like the max. That you listen to me for 30 minutes. I mean, I should be very grateful to you for being that interested in what I had to say. And if you look back at the presentation, you'll see that about at every 7 minute mark, there is a punctuation there. There is a change of topic. There's a change of pace. There's something that I do to recapture your attention because 10 minutes is a long time to pay attention, specifically on a day where you're on video a lot. So
Yeah.
human nature. There's a couple of things though. One is you and the distractions you have open. And I'm very upfront about this in any meeting or any training that I do. I always position it as a joke, but I'll always say, I always like to remind people that participation is a skill. So, I know we all have 75 tabs open. I usually have that as well. You can leave those open and you can write your emails and do what you want because that's the way we do meetings. That's fine. But you could also close them all and just have this tab open and focus on what we're doing here. And I can guarantee you'll get more out of it. And that little jolt generally makes people at least consider what they're going to do and close their email for 10 minutes, their chat for 15 minutes, whatnot. So that's one. The second one is what I always do, and I'm a big believer in food and energy, as in what I eat determines my level of energy throughout the day. I'm very mindful of that. If I have a busy day or productive day, I try not to load up on junk and sugar. I try to have a very steady energy balance throughout the day. If you take a cup of coffee 30 minutes before the meeting and you eat something like a banana or something sugary 10, 15 minutes before the meeting, the coffee kicks in about 30 minutes later. So at the start of the meeting, you're very, very alert, right? You have this boost of alertness. So that carries you through the first half of the meeting. And then 20 minutes later, the sugar from the food gets processed and gives you this energy boost. So you get another energy boost. So you can be mindful of what you're eating throughout the day and planning that before meetings so that as you go through the hour, actually your body physically is in a state of attention and in a state of energy. Worst time to do meetings is right after a heavy lunch because you know what happens, right? All the blood goes to your digestive system and your focus goes where your blood flows. It's not in your brain, right? It's in your body processing food. So don't do meetings after lunch and you'll see your attention span already increase. The third thing to answer this question is interludes and breaks, right? Breakouts, but also energizers and other things. When you plan a meeting, be aware of the energy level. And it's not fair to the people in the meeting if their topic is at this 40-minute mark, so 1 hour into the meeting, that you go into that conversation with their senses already filled with the conversation before, right? So what you want to do is you want to build in time and say, let's take a 2 or 3 minute break. That's usually more than enough. You can do a 1 minute mindfulness exercise. You can go for a walk. I often encourage people to step outside. And you can get that cup of coffee or something that will get you through that last half an hour of the meeting. And the longer meetings are, the more breaks you need to have, and the longer the breaks need to be in between as well. So those are a couple of things you can do to increase your attention span, that I have found very effective.
By the way, like one follow-up question on this one, like, is there a best practice to have, let's say, to have 30 minutes, long meeting or just 1 hour long meeting? Like, I don't know, like, what is the optimum, like length of the meeting? Let's say,
Good
like
question.
30 minutes would be good.
Good question. Absolutely, good question. And the answer is there isn't any. So let's
Okay.
let's be clear about that. There isn't a science, or at least not any research that I'm aware of, that let's phrase it that way. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I would approach this question from a different point of view. I run a storytelling training, which is an hour and 45 minutes. I run a effective meeting training, which is an hour and 15 minutes. And both those time slots are geared towards the objective that we're trying to run. And I get zero complaints that it is
Mm,
too long, right? Actually, in fact, people always say, time flew in this session. I wish my
mm,
meetings were like this, or wow, the 2 hours are already up, but I still want to do so much. So that shows me that people are very engaged in the process, right? So it's not about how much time do we have for the meeting, it's how much
mm,
time does the meeting need, what is it going to take for us to get to our objectives. And that's why these first three things are so important. What's your objective, what's the agenda, and how much time does that allow? And I when I give trainings, I always make this joke: have you ever been item number 15 on a 30-minute meeting? Right, so you're the 15th item on the agenda in a 30-minute meeting, and everyone laughs because everyone knows if you're not item 1 or 2 or 3 on a 30-minute meeting, it's not going to happen in that meeting for you, right?
uh-huh.
So you just be aware of, you can have a 5 hour or an 8 hour working session, and that is completely fine and valid if the objective is clear and the people who are invited to it are bought into that is the time we need, or different people can join at different time slots. You can also
Uh-huh.
have very effective 10-minute meetings. You don't always need to block a 30-minute slot to have an effective meeting. So it's more about form following function and looking at the objective and then determining how much time you need and designing for that. It's a
Got it.
very good
Okay.
question, Cuba. Very good question.
Thanks. Okay, let's go to the other question now. Francisco is asking, what do you think about share minutes/notes after the meeting? Maybe people will think I don't trust them, and this is why we need to put everything on right.
It's a good question, Francisco, and thank you for asking it. I can't specifically address the last part of the question because I don't understand maybe the meeting culture or the culture that you might be working in. I don't have that experience, and I haven't had that at Google. I haven't had that in the companies that I've run for myself. I think the purpose of a meeting is to drive work forward. The purpose of a meeting is very objective to me. There's very little emotion to it. It's a tool, just like my laptop is a tool or my phone is a tool. Meetings for me are tools that I use to help drive the work forward. The notes, therefore, are a part of the work. They are a way for me to make sure everyone's on the same page. They're a way for me to make sure we can all read up, that we all have the links, that everyone can contribute to the work that's being done. And they are a living document that I encourage people to update not only during the meeting, but also in between the meetings, right? So that we always have this central place where we can find the latest information. I think sharing that, and I share everything with everyone when I run projects. I think if I am going to be effective in working in this remote environment, making sure that people have access when it is 3 a.m. my time, but it is 7 a.m. their time or 10 p.m. their time, so that they don't have to wait for me to wake up to give them access, is a big benefit to the workflow. So it is sharing the notes to me, sharing the information to me is about making sure that everyone can work when they want to, how they want to, where they want to, rather than having that be some sort of bottleneck for the project that we're running. So and especially in a virtual or a remote working team, sharing things makes it easier for people to contribute and keep the work going, is how I'd
Mhm.
answer it. And I hope that helps you out, Francisco.
Actually, even the action items can be listed, in the meeting notes, so people can just kind of, see what's going to happen next. Maybe like that might be helpful to just, share the notes too, and then collaborate with each other. So that's one of the, tactics we do right in the meetings.
Very true. Very true. Very
Yeah,
good point. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. So Nadia is asking, so true, a virtual space can help us to reach with the global community, but the question is, how to manage with all other virtual meetings and sometimes overlapping. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a challenge.
Totally,
Once
totally get
again.
it. I if I was giving this training at Google, I'd invite people to take a look at my calendar, and Kubra and Karina can do that. And you'll see that it is very hard to book meetings with me. I have specific times of day that I am available for meetings, and I am always available, even if you book on the day itself or a day in advance. And there are times that I've blocked where there might be meetings, but those are meetings that I schedule because they're very relevant to the topics that the projects that I'm running and that I'm a part of. So what I'm trying to say here, this is a part of your meeting discipline and your meeting hygiene, right? And you want to take ownership of your calendar as much as you can, first of all. So you can pick which meetings you are going to and which meetings you're not going to, and also start asking which meetings you must attend versus which meetings are optional for you. And if there are meetings where the content you can get on demand afterwards, I would always suggest that you find a time during your week to watch the video or read the notes afterwards so that you're at least up to date rather than spending time during your productive time, right? And for me, that's the morning. So if I don't have meetings in the mornings, I get so much done. And I have a lot of meetings in the afternoon so that I can set up the work for the next days. So that you use your productive time as well as you possibly can. Now, the flip side of this is that in virtual, it's become really easy to schedule meetings. And we've started to make our meetings shorter, right? We can do 60 meetings in a day if we do 30-minute slots, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And you don't want to fall in the trap of doing that. So it comes back to asking yourself again, well, what's the objective of this meeting? What's the agenda? Who needs to be there? And once you start doing that very critically of all of the meetings that you have in your calendar, you will also start to be able to create pockets of space that you can do the work without the meetings, and you'll see that the overlap will likely dissipate. And sometimes if you're on multiple projects with different stakeholders, meetings will overlap and clash. And that's why you need to take the 27 minutes on the Friday for looking 10 days ahead. Because if you see the clash 10 days ahead, you can still plan and manage that. If you see it 3 days ahead of time, it becomes more difficult, right, to reschedule for everyone.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
hope that
So
that helps, Nadia.
got it. Yeah, thank you for answering that one. Just one quick question here, actually related to that one. Like, they say it could have been an email, like instead of like a meeting, right? So how can we understand, like, if it's an email, like it should require an email, like, or it should be like an e-meeting. So maybe to understand that difference might be helpful when it comes to just judging, and then evaluating if there's a need or not, right?
Love it. So, could it have been an email or could it have been a video? I also like to create videos or audio
Ah,
files because it's I have a good microphone. I like to use it. No, it's because sometimes listening when I'm in the car or in the train is more effective than actually sitting through a meeting. So, what's the cutoff point? The cutoff point, you could assess it probably like this. This is how I do it. Um, what's the objective of the meeting, right? And if the purpose is solely to share, purely sharing, I will second guess. If I have set up the meeting, I will look at myself in the mirror and go, why? Why? Because I'm just talking to people. And they can read the email, they can watch the video, they can listen to me do that in another setting. Is there a clear agenda for this meeting? And can I get everyone that needs to contribute to the conversation or decision into that meeting at that time, or is everyone not going to be able to be there? If the answer to any of those two is no, you might also consider turning it into a different medium, right? Because if it is just a matter of updating the people and they can't even all make it there, you're going to have to share the notes anyway. But the most important cutoff point is this a conversation? Is this a decision-making session?
yeah,
Do we have a conflict that we need to resolve? And I don't mean a conflict between people, but for example, we have two paths and we need to weigh the pros and cons of different paths, and there's no easy choice. That requires a meeting. That's when
yeah,
meetings, that's when they live. That's where you can get everyone together and you have really good conversations and get to know the project and bring it forward. But if
yeah.
it's just me talking for 30 minutes, as much as I like to do it, as you may have noticed, no, because it doesn't serve anyone. So that
Yeah.
would be the easiest point to cut that off. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So we have only 1 minute left, and then before we start our other session, so we can just get one more question, and then maybe Tobias, if you have time to just answer the questions on the comment section, just maybe we can do that too if your schedule permits. So Perry is asking how to encourage attendee contribution. I asked for people to provide thoughts, but people seem shy to do so.
Love it. This is a good question. I will have to jump off because I have a 1.5-year-old and a wife, and it's 8 p.m. In the evening here. As much as I'm enjoying the conversation and seeing the questions, but I hope most of it is answered also in the presentation, specifically to this one, because this is one that also comes up and has been coming up a lot. And I saw something coming up about having camera turned on or off as well. I don't care if people have their camera turned on or off. I'll say that up front, and that's also part of attendee contribution. What I care about is if I see someone engaging, so if they're using smileys or likes in the chat, if they're chatting, if they're leaving a lot of comments in the working doc, which is a way to communicate in the meeting, versus speaking up in the meeting, because not everybody is always comfortable speaking up, but I like to provide them with different pockets to contribute to the team conversation as we're having these meetings, because that's what they're there to do, right? Attendee contribution is an interesting concept, is what I'm trying to say, because if attendee contribution, your measure for that is, does someone speak up during the meeting? We're missing the frame here. The frame's too small. We can make it larger. We can say, well, we have a working doc where people can comment. We have a chat where people are active. We have other ways where people can share and contribute to the outcome of the meeting that is not necessarily fixed in their verbal participation in the process that's going on. If you want to encourage it, I always suggest the following to people. Look at the way your meeting is structured. If you want a conversation, right? If your objective is to have a conversation, but from the first minute of the meeting, there is one person who does all of the talking for at least 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, then it is very hard to kickstart the conversation 30 minutes later. Better is to start with the conversation so that everyone gets into conversation mode, and then have these little moments of sharing information or giving a prompt through a presentation that furthers the discussion, so that you have people engaged and conversing from the start. And I use breakouts to do this. I will send people off in pairs at the start of a meeting, have them talk to each other, come back 5 or 10 minutes later, and then we give a prompt, we have a group discussion, and then we go into a breakout again. And the energy level goes up and up and up as we do that. So you have different ways of doing that. And finally, to this point, because I can see we're also out of time, is that you want to look at your meeting culture as in, is it allowing for conversation? Do people feel safe? Do people feel comfortable? Do people feel appreciated when they speak up or not? And building in the habits, the behaviors that create the space where people are comfortable contributing, and that could be culture, that could be appreciating it, that could be providing people with training on how to run meetings or how to present comfortably. All of these little things that build the confidence in having these group conversations is another way to encourage contribution, but never demand it. Don't put people on the spot. It's very uncomfortable, and it likely has the adverse effect.
Yeah, that's true. All right, with that said, that's a wrap. And then thank you so much, Tobias, for joining us. Actually, thank you for staying up late too. So I know you are in Amsterdam. So thank you so much. And then this was an enjoyable conversation with you, lots of tips and tricks. So hopefully everyone enjoyed too. So once again, maybe we can see you next time too. Take care, Tobias.
Bye-bye. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Kubra. And everyone, enjoy the rest of the talk. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. And now, let's invite our next speaker, who is going to talk about data management. So elevating your career with data. So Xinyu from Google, who is a data analyst, will join us to talk about data. So that's fun. Let's see. So I will start in a minute.
Hello everyone, hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to join our elevate Google developers. My name is Xinyu Zhang, and I'm working as a data analyst at Google. And today I'm going to share some of my learnings and experiences working with data. And the topic for today is elevate your career with data. Why and how to develop a data-driven mindset. Before I get started, I do want to point out that all the stuff that I'm going to share today is from my own perspective, not from Google. And there's no right or wrong answers to many questions around data analysis. So please feel free to ask any questions during our live Q&A later. Cool. So first of all, I want to share more about myself. So hey, I'm Xinyu. I got my bachelor's degree in engineering and economics from Peking University, China, and then I received a master's degree in business analytics from UC Davis. And during that time, I led a team and took a national second prize in Adobe Analytics Challenge. It was a great experience, and I would encourage all of you to check it out. It's an amazing data challenge. And right now, I'm working as a data analyst in the online partnership group, Google, as a data analyst. And I'm helping our ads publishers to grow their revenue. Also, fun facts about me. I was born and raised in Chongqing, China, the origin of hot pot. So I'm a big fan of hot pot. It's like in my blood, and I need to eat hot pot at least twice a week. And I also have been playing badminton for around 20 years. So if you are also a good player or a lover of badminton, I'm very happy to join your game as well. So for the agenda today, we're gonna cover the why part and the how part of like why and how to develop a data-driven mindset with some examples and exercises. For the why part, I believe data could help us to make better decisions, understand the past, and also predict the future. And then for the how part, I would suggest you to prepare to get your hands dirty and always think with data and then learn big data tools. So let's dive deep into it. Cool. For the why part, firstly, I believe data could help us to make better decisions. I think there are tons of cases or examples where we could think of and where we use data to make decisions. And one of the best examples I could think of is running an A/B test. Say you're running your own business, you're running your own website, and you're wondering how to better design your layout to convert more people, be it sign up as a new user or subscribing to your email comms, etc. So one of the best way or most effective ways is to run an A/B test. For example, we got version A and version B here, and version A is your current version, and version B is the version that you want to test out if this one has higher conversion rate. So how are we going to do that? Let's do an A/B test, and then let's look at the data itself. So for version A, we got 100K visitors and 8K or 8,000 of them were converted. So the conversion rate will be 8%. And then for version B, we also get 100K visitors and 8.5K of them were converted. So the conversion rate is 8.5%. So here we're seeing like 0.5% increase. So can we switch to version B or choose version B? Although we've only seen 0.5% increase. Let's take 10 or 20 seconds to think about it. Cool. I believe you already got your own answer. So in this case, usually we cannot simply say, okay, 5.5% is significantly or not. So usually what we're going to do is do a proportional z-test to calculate the p-value of this test in order to decide whether this 0.5% increase is statistically significant or not. And the answer is yes. After we do the test, the proportionality test, we calculate the p-value, which is way smaller than 0.05. So we're gonna choose version B, although we've only seen this 0.5% increase. In fact, this 0.5% increase might bring you about like additional thousands of revenue per month. So just keep in mind that small change will make huge impact. So as you can see from this case, we rely heavily on the data to make better decisions. And then secondly, I think data could help us to understand the past. I believe there are many times when you ask yourself or ask your team, how is my business performing? And how is my business performing like last year or last month or even just last week? And what are my users' preferences? We can find all the data or all the answers in the data itself. Here's an example where you receive some survey results from your customers and you want to know how they like your products. We can't just simply look at the data itself, right? Because it might be very long and might be very messy. So what we usually do is to do a descriptive statistics. So from these two charts, we could simply tell that majority of our users identify them as male users, and more importantly, black and white are the most popular ones or most popular colors, followed by silver and blue. And here's another example for the total bill of a meal from your, say, restaurant. So the x-axis is the day of a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And y-axis is the average total bill. So you can very directly see that, cool, so for Sunday and Saturday or weekend, people usually pay more than weekdays like Thursday and Friday, and smokers usually pay more than non-smokers, except Friday. So after we do this descriptive statistics, we could very easily and directly see your customers' payment patterns or habits. And another great example is definitely dashboards. For me, building dashboards is one of my favorites when I'm working with data, because we can easily and very quickly get a holistic view of everything that we care about in an interactive and intuitive way. So say for this COVID-19 dashboard, we could very easily see how the virus spread in 2020 around the world. And we can also see how the confirmed cases, recovered, death, and active, what the numbers look like in each period. It's quite straightforward. And you can build similar dashboard for your own business as well. You can track your key metrics like total active customers, conversion rate, and your user segmentation and vertical, etc. So as you can see from this examples, with the help of data, we could understand the past very easily and quickly, and our business will benefit from it a lot. And then, thirdly, data could help us to predict the future. I think we're living in a world where uncertainty is a constant. So many of us are kind of desperate to know what's going to happen in the future so that we could be prepared for that. And data could be very helpful in this effort. Here, I want to share an example of customer churn, because I believe for every startup or every small business, for you guys to grow, figuring out how to decrease customer churn or increase customer retention should always be your top priority. Then we can collect our customer data and analyze some key questions in this case, like what drives churn, or what are the good indicators of customer churn, and what does not drive churn. So after we look into data and do some analysis on that, we need to figure out, or we could come up with a list of factors or variables that could be the potential indicator of customer churn. And after that, a more important question that we need to answer is, how can we prioritize them? Because we've only got very limited resources, very limited marketing budget, but how can we prioritize those variables? For example, we got 10 variables or 10 indicators of a customer churn, but we only have to target 5 of them. So how can you prioritize it? So this is another question that we need to figure out after we're doing the data analysis. And I think more importantly, or even most importantly, we could leverage regression analysis or some machine learning analytics for us to better understand how those variables affect customer churn and also predict the churn rate. So if we got a new user, a new customer, we could be very comfortable to say, okay, this one has like 90% of probability to churn or not, so that we could take actions before it's too late. So this is another thing about the why we need to develop a data-driven mindset, because data could help us to predict the future and take early actions. Well, to recap here, for the why part, why we need to develop a data-driven mindset. Firstly, data could help us to make better decisions. A/B testing is one of the best examples I can share with you. And secondly, data could help us to understand the past. We could do descriptive statistics and building dashboards or visualizations to help us to understand the past, how our business is performing, etc. And third, data could help us to predict the future. Customer churn is one of the best examples here, and we could think of other examples as well, so that we could take early actions before anything becomes too late. So this is for the why part. And then for the how part, how we could develop a data-driven mindset. You can Google this question and you can get tons of blogs and videos and talks around it. But for me, my biggest suggestion, or I would say my top suggestion, is to prepare to get your hands dirty. In fact, the majority of our real-world data is really, really messy. It might be more messy than you can ever imagine. And you're gonna spend 70% of your time just cleaning the data set before you do analysis. So sometimes, or there are many times when you're really excited to do your fancy analysis, you're gonna do some models, you're gonna do some dashboards, you're gonna do some EDA, exploratory data analysis. But as it turns out, you cannot do anything at all if you don't do the data cleaning. So don't be surprised and don't be upset, because it's really, really common when you encounter those dirty data sets. So my first example will be missing data. So the screenshot here is a data set from Kaggle. So for those of you who are familiar with data science, I think you must know the platform called Kaggle. This is a place or great platform where you could apply your data analysis and machine learning skills to solve big challenges in the real world. And the most famous one here is the Titanic challenge. So basically, what we want to trying to do is want to predict each passengers, will they survive the accident or not, based on their name, their gender, their age, etc. And as you can see from the dataset here, for the column cabin, we can see there are a lot of NaN or null values there. So it's really, really common when you're working with your own data set, there will be a lot of missing data. So you need to figure out how to cope with it. So this is going to be a first step. And a second example is incorrect data. So don't think it's very, very rare to see some incorrect data when you're doing analysis. Actually, it happens all the time. So typos, errors, or just incorrect data, it just shows up everywhere, especially when you are working with some survey data or text data, which involves some manual work. So when you're working with those data, just don't be surprised or upset by how many errors or how many typos you're gonna catch in the raw data set. And third example is outliers. Seeing some outliers is so common in the real world or when you're doing analysis. Say when you're looking at pricing data or income data, etc. So what we usually do before our analysis is a outlier detection. So one good way to do that is just plug them into this scatter plot, so we could very easily and directly see what is the outlier. Also, seeing an outlier is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it could help us to discover a new opportunity or a new growth area if we take a closer look at them. So remember the Adobe Analytics challenge that I just mentioned? So our team noticed a outlier when we were doing the initial analysis, and then we looked into it and finally completed an in-depth analysis on this, which brought us the second prize. So it was a really, really good experience. And for the outliers itself, just don't ignore them. So usually we'll look into it, and it's up to you to make any decisions to look deeper into it or just delete it. And the list goes on and on and on, because I cannot give you a full list, and there are a lot of cases where we can't expect it to come. So just be prepared that you're gonna get your hands dirty. The data could be very, very messy and unclear. So never expect your data to be clean. You need to check it and do the data cleaning yourself. So that's my first suggestion. And then the second one, I would say always think with data. So after this presentation, I hope you guys could develop a kind of habit. So whenever you are working on a question, just ask yourself, can I get some data to look into it? What data do I need? And what kind of analysis I can do based on those data? And then what kind of questions I can resolve after the analysis. So just keep asking yourself those questions before arriving to any conclusions. So here we got one example. Say you're running your own e-commerce website, and you just notice that, oh, the online orders just dropped 20% in the last month. So what are you gonna do about it? So how can you find some causes or some reasons behind the drop of 20%? Because it's kind of huge. Let's take 20 seconds to think it over. Cool. Yeah, I believe all of you have a list of causes, a list of reasons that you think might cause this drop. So in this case, I think it's very, very common when we want to analyze the cause of this. So the first step I would suggest you to do is to check the seasonality data, or what is the order volume last year. So we could do a year-over-year comparison. Say if last year our online orders dropped like 25%, then we should be fine. We should be not that too worried about this, because we might be doing better this year. And then you can do the year-over-year comparison, month-over-month, or quarter-over-quarter. So the first step is to check the seasonality data before we dive into this question. And the second one, we could check the industry average data. Say if this industry, the whole industry, or your competitor is experiencing a decline as a whole, then you should be fine. But if not, you need to take some time to look into it. But after all, we need to check the industry average or your competitor, how they are performing during this time, so you can better position yourself. And another data that we could take a look at is the funnel data, or the funnel analysis. Because for your e-commerce website, your user has a very, very clear path or very clear funnel. They visit your website, view your items, and then add them to the shopping cart, checkout page, then make the payment. So here is a very clear funnel, and then you could calculate what is the conversion rate of each layer and which layer has the lowest one. Then that might be the cause of this drop, so that you could take a look into it and make decisions after that. But after all, you need to take those data out and then do your analysis. And third, or the fourth one, the notification system. Notification is one of the best way for you to re-engage your customers. So if you notice the online orders dropped 20%, okay, this is a huge question, you could check the notification system, how it's performing. For example, if you communicate your messages to your customers through emails or app notifications, you need to check, am I sending the right message to the right person? What is the open rate and what is the click-through rate, etc., and other metrics. So in this case, you need to check those metrics or check how your notification system works through some data analysis before we arrive a conclusion for this answer. So to conclude, I would encourage you whenever working on a question, just think with data. What kind of data do I need, and what kind of analysis I can do based on those data. And the list could goes on as well. And then, last but not least, learn big data tools. So as we enter the big data era, we came to realize that our existing tools like Excel and traditional database, they just cannot handle big data problems. You cannot even open a file over 300 megabytes with Excel, right? Then how can you analyze it, and how can you visualize as well? So in this new era, we need to learn new tools or big data tools. So this is one of my favorite charts because it covers the whole life cycle of a data pipeline. And this is what we can do around data. And as you can see, there are different layers here, from ETL layer to data preparation layer, and feature engineering, model building and validation, and reporting visualization layer. So under each layer, there are different tools or popular tools under each layer. So for the first two layers, this is like ETL layers and data preparation layer. This is usually what a data engineer does. So the main goal here is to build a reliable database or reliable data warehouses for further analysis and reporting. So it usually will involve some ETL work, extract, transform, and load, and data cleaning work with tools like Spark, Hadoop, SQL, and Python, etc. And then for the next two layers, feature engineering and model building and validation layer, this is usually what a data scientist or a data analyst does. So the main goal here is to extract some insights or conclusions or discover some structure from the vast data set so that we could make better decisions and understand the data itself better. So we usually will use tools like Python, R, and Spark. And then for the last layer, the reporting and visualization layer, this is more related to our business needs. And this is really what a business intelligence analyst does. Because we all like visualizations, we all like dashboards because they just very handy and convenient and interactive. So for a business intelligence analyst, they will use tools like Python, Java, Tableau, or Power BI, etc. to build dashboards for you to make decisions. So as you can see from left to right, this is a life cycle of what we can do with big data. And depending on your own interest and career goals, you could learn different tools for you to work with big data. It's quite important. And if you are very, very new to data industry, I would recommend you to start with SQL, Python, R, and Tableau, because those are the four basics for you to work with big data. Yeah, just to recap here, for the how part, how to develop a data-driven mindset, my first suggestion is just to prepare to get your hands dirty, because we are dealing with real-world data set and real-world problems. So there will be missing data, incorrect data, outliers, and a lot of other unexpected cases. They are very, very common. Just be prepared. And then always think with data. You can develop that kind of mindset or habit whenever you're working on a question. Just think, can we leverage some data here to answer the questions? And then last but not least, I will encourage you to learn some big data tools: SQL, Python, R, and Tableau. These are the four recommendations I could share with you, and you can get started with that. So with that, this is all the presentation I can that I have for you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in and ask any question you might have. Cool. Just see you in the live session later. Thanks so much for listening.
All right, now we are back. Thank you so much, Xinyu, for the great presentation. Actually, like we saw, like actually what is why, like, and then the how. I like the separation of both, and then like because it's important to understand the why, like before we go to the how part. So that was the most important part that I actually took personally. So thank you once again. And now, like, it's time for questions, and I don't see like questions in the chat right now, but we can just give some time for people to think about, like what they're like going through when it comes to data, or like what they would like to learn from you. So maybe I can start, like my first question to you, like personally, that I can ask. So we are actually working with developers here. And like our developer community is, like handling all of the data structures and stuff. So when it comes to, let's say, not only, like producing, let's say, building a product, like how important is it is to, let's say, encourage people to, like, let's say, think about the data when it comes to marketing, or when it comes to, program management, or when it comes to even making a decision, like at the grocery store, like all the like mindset. How do you see this is like important, and then how can we, have that mindset, like in general, and just how to spread, that mindset out with other people? So it's kind of an, like a general question, but hopefully this is addressing, like all of the questions in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you, Kira. Thanks for inviting. Yeah, that's a good question, I would say. So, and I also think this is a question that we want to discuss for or the topic for my whole presentation. So basically, after this presentation, I would hope you guys, whenever you are working on a question, so which let's say we are running your own business, or what kind of or what type of people or customer you need to target, and how to better target them, how to better reach them, and what kind of analysis you can do after collecting some data. And whenever you're
Mhm.
working on these questions, always think what kind of data I can have. Say when you're developing your own app or your own product, then you need to say, okay, who is my target audience? So you need to do some
Hmm.
like marketing surveys, you need to collect some data from the official website or anywhere else, and then collect their demographic data and say, okay, this part of a specific part of or this specific group of people should be interested in my product or should be my target audience. And then based on their own
Mhm.
preferences, what kind of service or what kind of differentiation I can do to better attract them onto my platform or onto my product. So you cannot do this without data analysis, because you cannot just okay today or based on the business experience, yeah, you can make a decision. But if you have data, and if you could do some visualizations, do some like analysis on that, whether it's machine learning or regression, etc., you can really get some insights. You can really see, okay, this is something that we really need to look into. Or just like the customer churn example I just shared, so you can identify some of the indicators of customer churn, so that you can like, take some actions before they churn or not. So yeah, I think this is something that we need to develop. And yeah, whenever you're working in those questions, just think, okay, can I get some data? And then what kind of analysis I can do about it? Yeah, I hope
Yeah,
that answered your
perfect.
question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that helps. And actually, meanwhile, we had some questions here. So hopefully,
Perfect.
let's just, answer those too. So Pratik is asking, thank you for the presentation. What's the best website or source for learning the tools? Like Python, Tableau, SQL, or R?
Cool. Yeah, good question. I think this is also something that most of you guys are more care about. So basically, I think there are tons of free websites or free resources. You can search online. You can just Google it, like R, Python, or SQL, or Tableau. And my suggestion is just pick one of them and stick with it. And say for Python, or yeah, just let's take Python for example. There are many free courses online. You don't have to spend tons of time think which one should I choose. You can just choose one and then stick with it, and then learn it like systematically, and get like kind of more sense about okay how I can do the data visualization in Python, how I can do data manipulation in Python, etc. And then after that, I think more importantly, do some project, because I think R, SQL, Python, or Tableau, they are very practical in terms of data analysis. So you need to do some project, because no matter how much you learn or how hard you try to memorize those concepts or those like drag in, drag out, you cannot fully understand it until you work on a project. So this is my biggest advice. So just work on some project after you learn some basics of those languages or those tools, and this will be the best way for you to practice it, and make it really something you can own and very comfortable to use. Yeah, that's my suggestion.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then the next question is coming from Jeff. Looker versus Data Studio. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a hard one. So personally, actually, I don't think that okay. Well, there are tons or many different tools for data visualization, and my suggestion is you just stick with one of it, or just become an expert of one of them, like Looker or Data Studio or Tableau or Power BI or whatever you call it. So just become an expert of it, and then actually they are quite similar. So the concept is similar there, and when you're building those dashboards or visualizations, they're quite similar. So just pick one of them, like your own favorite. So for me, my personal favorite is Tableau. So, but it just depends on your own preferences. And then just become an expert to it. Take more time learning it and building some dashboards, and you have more practice into it. So yeah, no specific recommendation. So just based on your own preferences, and that's fine.
Yeah, both of them are Google products now, so
Yes.
we cannot say like either this one or that one, but yeah, definitely. Thank you. And then the next question. Xinyu said it's important to get your hands dirty. So is there any recommended exercise for beginners to get their hands dirty? Wow, okay, interesting question.
Interesting question. Cool. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's a good one. Yeah, I think for you to get your hands dirty for a beginner, especially, you can just download any data from real world, not from any like school website, etc. Just download any data set, say from Kaggle or from other real world data set, and you can figure out it, or you can see there are tons of missing data or like outlier, etc. And then when you start to work on it, so maybe you assume, okay, I can finish this kind of task or this analysis in 5 days or 3 days. But when you really start to work on it, you'll see, oh, the data is not the way you imagine, and you have to do data cleaning all the time. Whenever you're doing analysis, when you're doing anything, you have to do the data cleaning, because there are always some unexpected cases or edge cases, and you have to dig into it and get your hands dirty. So my suggestion is just start with any data set that comes handy, and just to work on something, just work on some questions or some analysis on that, and then you can really get your hands dirty. I'm sure you will. So just start to work on it. Just pick any data set, and yeah, analyze some questions around that.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you for the tip. And then the other question is coming from San Francisco. So I had the impression that the why requires statistics knowledge and the how data science tool knowledge. In what to focus if we don't have so much time? Okay, I guess what do we focus on first? Like how or why? I think both of them, but yeah, tell us why.
Yeah, that's a good one. So actually, I think both are quite important when you're doing some analysis. But if you have limited time or uh, resources, I would suggest you to start with the tool. So because if you have those statistics knowledge, but you cannot apply it, then it would not be that useful. So you can start to learn Python, start to learn R, especially R if you want to practice your statistical knowledge or your statistical analysis. Start with R. That could be more suitable than Python. And then yeah, you can just start with both tools, and then get familiar. Like at least you have to be familiar with how to manipulate your data set, right? And after that, you can run some statistical tests or some statistical analysis and get like calculate p-value, etc. So my suggestion would be like first step, just get familiar with those tools, and second step, work on some projects to sharpen your skills or be more familiar or more comfortable working with those data. And third step, apply more advanced analysis, such as those statistical analysis. So this is my suggestion. Yeah. So for sure, up to you guys. That this is my recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And then another question actually from him. Do you know nice resources to find data science case studies?
Yeah, that's a good one. So a couple of platforms that you could really learn or apply your data science skills. One is Kaggle, as I mentioned. Yeah, it's a free online platform, and I know some because they usually organize some online competitions and to work on really hard data science challenges. And there are a group of people they call themselves as Kaggler because they make a living on that because they have really good skills to um, tackle those data science questions. So yeah, so my first suggestion is Kaggle. Just check out Kaggle, and there are tons of interesting data science case or problems that you could apply your skills and work on real world questions. And then my second suggestion is there are many books around data science challenge. So you could check out those books or some website, and they will guide you through like how we usually approach a data science question and like what's the first step, second step, and third step. Yeah. Just another note is that do not be kind of overwhelmed or kind of too eager to, okay, I need to work on at least 10 data science case study or 20 data science case studies. This is not your end goal. Your end goal is to learn the framework. You learn how to do those similar analysis when you have this kind of data, what kind of analysis you should do. This is the more important part because you cannot work on all the projects in the world, right? Because there are millions data science case studies in the world, and you don't have enough time to work on them all. So the most important part is really learn and think what is the best thinking process or the analysis framework. That should be the main goal. So yeah, this is my suggestion or my answer to this question. Thanks for asking this.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, this is my favorite question among all of them. So, how to tell a good story after data analysis? So, actually, like to convince people to make the decisions, like to even promote like your maybe products, like lots of things can come out of this one. So, yeah,
Yeah.
any recommendations?
Yeah, this is a good one. I love this one. So a couple of, I think this is really practical, especially when you're really working on a data science or data analysis project, and you want to have some impact, right? You want to sell it to your stakeholders, and then storytelling would be your best way, or it would be very necessary in this case. A couple of tips or suggestions here. One is do not mention or try to avoid those technical terms because in most cases, your stakeholder, your audience, they will not understand what is T test, what is proportional T set, etc. So just try to avoid those terms so you will not scare them and understand their language. Say you're presenting to a sales team, and then you need to figure out how I can convey my suggestion or my insights into their language. Say we need to emphasize on like sales, like price or profit or return on investment ROI or click-through rate, etc. Some metrics that they care. Just speak in their own language instead of your own technical terms. So this is my first suggestion. The second one is try to make as many data visualizations as possible because we are more comfortable or we prefer to see more visualizations. It's more straightforward and it's more interactive and intuitive. So try to make more visualizations and this will usually one chart will cover everything you want to say. So just tell the story via the visualization. So there's one book, I forgot its name, but I can put a link back into this group. So that book is very helpful, which could help you to build better visualizations and tell a good story based on the visualization. And third, and I think my third suggestion to this one is try to make a storyline or make your analysis more logical. So this is my first step, or this is my first approach to the question. And second step, third step, etc. To make it more logical and make it more engaged because you are analyzing the question step by step. So that's going to be a big approach, or that's going to be a good story after you be mindful of this. So yeah, I think this is something on top of my mind right now. But I think there should be other suggestions, but this is my top three.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing all the tips. So to be mindful of the time, I will just, go through all of the questions. So Mumin is asking, what will be your preferred suggestion on becoming or a data analysis and roadmap?
Cool. Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, you have to figure out do you want to be a data analyst or data scientist, right? So I think there are kind of confusions around many people. So what is the difference between data analyst and data scientist? So based on your own preference, and you could choose. Okay, I want to be a data analyst or a data scientist. In many cases, sometimes data scientist is doing a data analyst job, and sometimes they are doing a machine learning engineer job. Sometimes they are doing a statistician's job. But in most cases, they are more technical or they are more focused on the modeling side instead of analytical side. So as a data analyst, you will be more focused on how I can integrate those data analysis into business decisions to inform the decisions and make impact. So once you decide, make your own decision on this, say you want to become a data analyst, as I am. So I think my suggestion would be, or my roadmap, my suggestion roadmap would be, first of all, just be very like proficient with those technical skills like Python, SQL, and R and Tableau. And SQL will be my top suggestion. So because you have to use SQL every day. So I write SQL like every day and like 200 and at least 300 a line per day. So this is gonna be your top competency or the top tools that you need to be need to master. And the second suggestion is try to improve your communication skills. Just the one that I think Becky asked, how to tell a good story, because just mastering those technical skills is not enough, because there are many people who are good at these tools, but not everyone can become a data analyst. The key part is how you can tell a good story, right? How you can build those dashboard and also convey your findings, your insights, and get the buy-in from your stakeholders, right? So this is going to be my second suggestion. And third suggestion would be, yeah, just practice your product sense or improve your product sense, because especially to prepare many interviews, they usually ask a question like, say, just like the case that I just presented, like your orders just dropped 20%, what kind of action you need to do? Or we just launched a new feature. How do you plan to evaluate its performance? And what kind of data do you need to evaluate its performance? Something like that. So my third suggestion is try to just more exercises on those questions, more focus on product, and then figure out what is the framework or how we could better approach these questions. So this is my third suggestion or the third step. I think this is pretty much of everything. And yeah, the first one is um, apply to those roles. And because if you just prepare on your own, you cannot get any feedback from the outside world. Yeah, so you can just submit those applications online and get some interviews and get some feedback, and then you can better know, okay, this is the way I need to improve, or this is something I need to improve, and then what kind of direction I need to move forward. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
That was a detailed answer. So thank you for,
Cool.
giving all of the, again, like roadmaps. And then here, Jeff, again. So is there any site with sample I cannot pronounce this one,
Validation.
visualization projects? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's hard, that get progressively more complicated.
I see. Yeah, this is a good one. Um, so I would recommend because for Tableau there is a public forum or public website where everyone else just publish their own works onto the online platform, and I would suggest you to check it out and download some of their work, and also you can get a more sense or get some ideas, get some inspirations how others are building their dashboard and what is like fundamentals of those dashboards, or what is some advanced tools or advanced skills to build those dashboards. So yeah, so I would recommend like to check out those online website or online forum for Tableau, Looker, and Data Studio, etc. Usually they have their own forum, and you can download it and play around with it yourself, and gradually you can grow your skills or sharpen your understanding, and yeah, be a better data visualization guy. Yeah, I think that could be helpful.
Perfect. And oh yeah, actually, of course, recommendation. I guess you already said all of them, right? So yeah, we just gave all the recommendations already. Or do we have any other recommendations, Xinyu? No, that's all,
Um,
right?
I think that's all.
Okay.
That's because for
Okay.
visualization, it's really practical. You can just
Yeah.
just follow other steps, follow others one steps, and get some inspiration, and then practice and practice and practice, and then create something you're on your own. I think
Yeah.
that's the best path.
Got it. Perfect. So maybe lastly, I will tell this. Sometimes, like how it is, like how important is it to just, like set up some automations when it comes to data. So I know it's really, really important, but sometimes, like you deal with manual data all the time too. So to get the raw data and then, put onto the like dashboards and stuff. So how do you see, the automations in terms of like getting more, like, being more organized, let's say?
Yeah, that's a good question, and this is actually what our team is working on, and what is my main OKR this quarter. Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Perfect.
So I think in terms of automation, the first question is step back. Let's just step back. Is necessary to build in automation, right? Because people think okay, automation is really fancy. It sounds pretty cool, but is it worth it? Is it worth your time to build like automation? You need to think about it. You need to calculate the ROI. Say if you
Uh-huh.
like say your manual work, it repeats every month and no major changes. And then yes, you need to build that kind of automation, and it will save you a lot of time. But if your input changes every month, and even if you build any automation, you still have to do some manual checks or even check more stuff. That may be not worth your time. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
first step is just figure out if it's necessary to build that automation, and if it's a yes, and then we could go to the next step. Okay, so if you want to build an automation, one of my best quotes is that anything that can be automated, it will be automated, because we really love save some time, because especially at Google we want to like build fancy tools to really scale the process and avoid some manual work, because that will involve
Yeah.
some errors, etc. So yeah, I'm a big fan of automation actually. So or that's what we call a data pipeline. So everything could be done in scripts or in workflows, etc. But you just need to figure out, okay, how much time I need to build this kind of automation, and how much time do I save in particular.
Yeah.
So I think that's the approach that we need to take here
Yeah.
in
The
terms of automation.
efficiency is really, really important. Like the
Hmm.
efficiency of the work that you are doing, right? So you need to look at some sort of reasoning behind it, actually, like to see like how the automation works. Perfect. Thank you. And this concludes our actually like conversation with you for today. And thank you so much for, like giving a great presentation and answering all of the questions coming from our committee. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the session too. And yeah, once
Yeah, of
again,
course.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cooper, for inviting. I do enjoy this conversation. And if anyone have more questions, just feel free to drop it in the chat. I can reply it. And also connect me on LinkedIn. I'm really more than happy to answer any questions related to this field.
Perfect. Thank you. And now let's wrap up our like this month's Elevate actually session. So thank you so much everyone for joining Elevate, and then hope you all enjoyed the sessions. We would like to kindly request from you to fill out the feedback surveys and the follow-up email or the link on the chat or screen, so that we can just improve the program along the way. So you are going to obtain a certificate of participation, just so you know, if you fill out the feedback surveys after the sessions. And you can use our hashtag LOA training, to just let us know how useful these sessions were you for you. So we are going to have our next session next month, and we will be giving you for more information if you sign up on the website already. And if you have any questions, once again, please email us at elevate analyst-team@google.com. And we are looking forward to seeing you next month. Till then, take care and stay safe.